Merci beaucoup. Nous allons procéder maintenant à la conférence de presse.
Вдячні всім. Переходимо до етапу прес-конференції.
Bien. Monsieur le Président, cher Volodymyr, Monsieur le Chancelier, cher Friedrich, Monsieur le Premier ministre, cher Keir, Messieurs les envoyés spéciaux, cher Steve, cher Jared, merci beaucoup pour votre présence aujourd'hui avec nous, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Mesdames et Messieurs en vos grades et qualités. Nous avons aujourd'hui tenu à Paris une nouvelle réunion des chefs d'État et de gouvernement des 35 pays qui composent la coalition des volontaires, aux côtés du président Zelenskyy et en présence d'une délégation américaine conduite par messieurs Witkoff et Kushner. C'est la 15e réunion.
This is the 15th meeting of the coalition of the willing that we've had since the 17th February of last year. We have with us 28 heads of state and government, the Secretary General of NATO, and the President of the European Commission, and the President of the European Council. But today, we've made considerable progress, as reflected in the Paris Declaration, providing strong guarantees for lasting peace. This declaration of the Coalition of the Willing, for the first time, recognizes operational convergence between the 35 countries making up the Coalition of the Willing, Ukraine and the United States of America. We're talking about strong security guarantees. This declaration sets out each of the components of this security guarantee. We have a report from our heads of general staff and also from the side of the Euro-American coordination. And here we have taken due note of the fact that there is a coordination body that will fully coordinate all the competent armed forces and provide coordination between the Coalition of the Willing, United States of America and Ukraine in operational terms that will support the General Staff of the Coalition here in Paris. So within this coalition, on the basis of all the work done in recent months, we have consolidated our approaches. Firstly, with the setting up ceasefire monitoring mechanisms to be placed under American leadership, with contributions from several states that said they were willing and able to do so. Then long-term support, firstly to Ukrainian armed forces that are and will remain in the front line of defense and deterrence against aggression. So we will have on a volunteer basis 800,000 men with training capabilities and all the necessary resources to ensure that this army can deter any new aggression. Then we'll continue to lay the ground for the creation of a multinational force in the air, on the seas and on land to provide reassurance after the ceasefire and a long way behind the contact line that was agreed between all the general staff from France to Germany and Poland. I would also like to salute the work done and offered by Turkey in maritime theatre. They are willing to take on responsibilities. And fourthly, we have decided to translate into legal terms these commitments to support Ukraine in the event of a new attack by Russia through solidarity and intervention mechanisms. And also, we are continuing to converge around the questions of economic support and corruption. That's the second thing we talked about. But at the same time, we have consolidated the architecture, the planning, the means and the rules for the security guarantee for Ukraine the day after peace is signed, both for Ukraine and the continent of Europe. Part of our discussion was then focusing on Ukraine's future prosperity with the American plan that was presented and the European contributions with a desire to speed up our work alongside Ukraine so that in the next few weeks this prosperity plan can be finalized. It will be a major component of the peace agreements. All of this constitute essential pillars of what will support the negotiations that are underway, and we want, therefore, that to be completed as soon as possible. But these security guarantees are the key to ensuring that never a peace agreement can mean Ukrainian surrender, and never a peace agreement can mean a new threat for Ukraine. And I think what's very important to underscore is all the countries represented here, but also all the countries in the coalition of the willing, and those who attended this meeting following the excellent coordination that we had last year in Berlin. All those actors share the same desire for peace in Ukraine and Europe, but we insist that this be a fair, lasting and strong peace. And we're all clear in our minds that the peace agreements signed by Russia in the last 15 years have all been broken in Moldova, Georgia and Ukraine. Therefore, based on that experience, we want to have peace and guarantees of peace on the basis of Europe's experience of the last 15 years. This is why the Paris Declaration includes these guarantees and notes the convergence between coalition of the willing, Ukraine and the United States of America. In addition to all this, in the short term, we will continue to provide our support to Ukraine to cope with all the challenges it is facing at the moment in terms of protecting its airspace, protecting civilians who are continually targeted, even as we speak, by the Russians. And we will also continue our work on sanctions to limit and reduce Russia's war effort. So that is what I have to report, thanking my colleagues in Europe and the United States for the progress that has been possible thanks to today's meeting. I'll now hand over to President Zelenskyy.
Thank you, dear Emmanuel, for your invitation. I would like to thank Chancellor, Prime Minister, as well as the American representatives and all the journalists present. First of all, I would like to thank you for this meeting, which is the most representative. 27 leaders of the European Union, NATO, Australia, New Zealand, Turkey. As a matter of fact, it is a very broad representation, and we are able to sign a document. This is very concrete. There is a declaration, a joint declaration, and there's also this declaration of intent signed by all three countries. And this illustrates the willingness of the coalition and the European countries to work for peace. And we want to be ready so that when diplomacy reaches peace, we can place the forces of the coalition of the willing. The details will be set out in other documents. We're working on which countries are willing to contribute and guarantee security in the air, at sea, and on land. We are assessing which forces are necessary, who will be able to, who shall coordinate all of that. And we also want to work on monitoring and clearly say how this force or that force will be financed, as well as the Ukrainian army. I believe that Our Ukrainian forces will be based on the Ukrainian army with other elements. The military from France, the United Kingdom, and others have worked on the necessary military equipment. We also have, we already have enough details, and we know which countries will get involved and what each of them will contribute separately. And allow me to thank every leader who is willing to contribute to this peaceful solution. We also addressed, we had very concrete discussions with the American delegation regarding the monitoring of peace. It's very important for us. What is crucial in this peace deal is anything that can prevent a new Russian aggression. We also made progress with the American representatives who worked on documents in Paris, and we will have other meetings with Mr. Witkoff and Mr. Kushner. We are working on some bilateral agreements, bilateral documents as well as trilateral documents, and are hoping to sign these soon in different formats. And God willing, we will succeed. We are very grateful for the support of the United States of America, and so that they can provide the necessary support so that Russia cannot aggress Ukraine once again. And we very much agree upon the fact that the guarantees must be based on some legal grounds to be confirmed by the American Congress. Of course, some issues remain open regarding these documents, including the 20-point document. And what we really need to work upon is the issue of territory. We have a number of ideas that could be helpful. And if some issues are not remain blocked between our teams, and the leaders can also get involved. There will be other discussions, and I would like to thank you, Emmanuel, for giving this opportunity, allowing our teams to be able to continue working here for 2 days. And I'd like to thank the American representatives for contributing to it. When it comes to security, the architecture already exists, and our partners can pressure Russia to put an end to this war. Ukraine never stood and never prevented peace. Russia started this aggression, and it is very clear as to who should do what is necessary to be done to put an end to this war. So I would like to thank all of those who contribute to peace. We all understand that we need to stop the aggressor to allow peace. The deep strikes, the sanctions, our diplomacy, all of this is working. Today we also talked about our air defense. It is essential. Some leaders of the coalition of the willing mentioned it. For us, it is a daily issue. It is true that Ukraine needs missiles every day because, notwithstanding diplomacy, the Russian strikes continue. Russia is not concentrating on diplomacy. They are striking our villages or cities or infrastructure. And we discussed this issue with President Trump in Mar-a-Lago, and I would like to thank him deeply for his understanding and his support. In Paris, the extension of air defense has been discussed already again. The stronger our air defense, the stronger will be our diplomacy. So thank you to all of you for your support. Thank you.
Chancellor, Frederick, over to you. Thank you, Emmanuel. Ladies and gentlemen, this new year is beginning exactly the way the old one ended. That's to say, with intensive peace diplomacy for Ukraine. And today's meeting of the Coalition of the Willing was a further step on this path towards peace. And so I'd like to start by thanking Emmanuel Macron for his hospitality here in Paris. I'd also like to thank both Emmanuel and Kiev for preparing this meeting today, along with Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Because, ladies and gentlemen, today, in the triangle of Europeans, Ukraine, and United States, we have built on the progress that we achieved last year in Berlin. This is a shared success, and I'd also like to thank Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, the representatives of the United States, and thank them and President Trump for their support in all this effort. We have the same strategic goal. First and foremost, we want to make sure that the weapons in Ukraine, after 4 years of war, be finally silenced. The country is on the verge of a humanitarian energy crisis, and therefore we are stepping up, in any case, our enormous efforts so as to reach a swift conclusion. Secondly, we want there to be a ceasefire, and unlike the Minsk Agreement of 2015, one based on strong security guarantees. And thirdly, as Europeans and Ukrainians, we want to ensure that we can shape this ceasefire together. Today we focused on the contribution that Europe and its partners after a ceasefire could make for Ukraine. As Coalition of the Willing, we will be shouldering our responsibilities. We want to help to make sure that in the future there are strong armed forces in Ukraine that constitute a credible deterrent for Russia through arming, training and funding. We will also take part in the monitoring of a ceasefire, and we will also make a contribution to strengthening Ukraine on land, in the sea and in the air. With our partners in Washington, we agree for that certain conditions have to be met. Firstly, there needs to be strong legally binding security guarantees, including from the USA, and an American backstop to provide security European commitments. I'm very thankful that the United States has already said it would be willing to do so. Secondly, the ceasefire has to be organized in such a way with Russia that the Coalition of the Willing can play an active role. We are actually working towards that. And thirdly, of course, all partners in the coalition have to go through their domestic processes to decide what contribution they will make. Germany will continue to support politically, financially and militarily. That could mean, for example, that after a ceasefire for the Ukraine in a neighboring NATO area, we would have a presence. As for the type and scope of a German contribution, obviously that has to be decided by the German government and parliament once these conditions have been specified and clarified. For me and for the German government, I would say that for the moment, nothing is excluded. As of now, in the 4th year of the war, Germany is Kiev's strongest supporter. And after a ceasefire, Germany will accept responsibility for the security of Ukraine and for the continent as a whole. We also discussed today how after a ceasefire we could promote the reconstruction of Ukraine. We are working on a package for that among European partners in close coordination with the USA. The President of the Commission today explained today how the Commission could contribute to that. And this reconstruction is indissociable from the question of security guarantees. Economic strength will be an indispensable guarantee for ensuring that in the future Ukraine can present a credible deterrent to Russia. So, dear Volodymyr, this also means certain expectations of Ukraine, as we've discussed in Brussels. Ukraine must make sure that its young men can find decent jobs in their own country rather than traveling to Germany, Poland or France. This is something that we have already discussed in Brussels together, and I think that this is an expectation that Ukraine can meet and will meet. So, ladies and gentlemen, no one can say today whether the arms will be silenced in Ukraine in 6 weeks or in 6 months, but we are working tirelessly towards that peace. We'll obviously have to make compromises. We will probably not be able to achieve the ideal of a perfectly designed peace, not as much as we would like, but we have to learn not from books, but from the existing geopolitical circumstances going forward in the next 3 months. We will go about this with perseverance, realism, and a clear view of what is best for Europe. That's to say, a stable ceasefire, strong security guarantees, and peace in Europe, linking Ukrainians and Europeans that we form together. So once again, thank you for this excellent meeting today. It really was worth coming together in such great numbers. Never happened before in the coalition of the willing. We've never had so many people in one room as we had today in Paris, and that shows clearly to Russia that they have to stop the war. There's no point continuing it, and as coalition of the willing, we are willing to work with Ukraine and the US to find a way through to permanent or stable peace in Europe. So all the best for Ukraine. Thank you very much.
ce matin, faut-il envisager un déploiement de troupes européennes pour protéger le territoire? Enfin, est-ce pour préserver ce lien avec les États-Unis que vous n'avez pas condamné l'intervention militaire américaine au Venezuela?
Thank you. That's a multiple question. D'abord, sur la question du Venezuela, qui me semble étrangère à la question qui nous réunit aujourd'hui, la diplomatie a une voix et la diplomatie française s'est exprimée par les canaux qui conviennent. Et il faut la voir comme un tout. Et je crois avoir été, la diplomatie française avec moi, très claire sur le sujet. Sur la question qui nous occupe, la présence aujourd'hui des envoyés spéciaux du président Trump, les engagements du président Trump lui-même, en particulier ce qu'il a pu dire lors du rendez-vous qui s'est tenu à Mar-a-Lago en fin d'année dernière avec le président Zelenskyy, disent au contraire l'engagement des États-Unis d'Amérique pour bâtir la paix et prendre leurs responsabilités. Cette coalition des volontaires marque une étape nouvelle qui me semble correspondre à ce que nous défendons et qui, d'ailleurs, est conforme aux souhaits américains. Ce que la France défend depuis plusieurs années, c'est une Europe plus indépendante et c'est une plus grande autonomie stratégique, c'est-à-dire une Europe qui s'occupe de sa sécurité, davantage, en respectant le cadre otanien, mais qui prend davantage sa part. Ce que le président Trump a constamment dit, dans son premier mandat comme dans celui-ci, c'est que les Européens doivent prendre plus de la part du fardeau. C'est ce qu'il nous demande de faire. C'est cohérent. Et donc tout le travail qui a été fait ces derniers mois, à travers la coalition des volontaires, c'est d'avoir les Européens, mais je veux aussi souligner la présence dans la coalition des volontaires du Canada, de la Nouvelle-Zélande, de l'Australie, de plusieurs autres puissances, du Japon. En particulier, le Premier ministre canadien était avec nous aujourd'hui, ce qui est un signal très fort, et est engagé dans ces garanties de sécurité. Donc cette coalition des volontaires, elle est, si je puis dire, le cœur battant de ce soutien à l'Ukraine pour les garanties de sécurité. Elle dit le jour d'après la paix, voilà comment nous nous mettons en situation d'apporter à l'Ukraine ces différentes composantes, et en particulier un format d'armée ukrainienne qui dissuadera toute nouvelle agression, des forces multinationales de réassurance et des règles d'engagement. Dans ce contexte-là, le soutien et la participation américaine sont très importants pour beaucoup de pays. Elles sont très importantes pour beaucoup de pays qui sont membres de l'OTAN. Elles sont très importantes parce que les capacités américaines, parfois une exclusivité sur certaines composantes de ces garanties de sécurité qui les rendent clés. Ces dernières semaines ont marqué un changement, puisqu'il y a eu un engagement américain. Ça a été dit par le chancelier Merz dans notre rendez-vous à Berlin, a permis d'acter déjà une étape et un mouvement. Ensuite, Secure, et donc le général américain en charge des forces justement américaines en Europe, mais également les coordonnants au titre de la participation américaine dans l'OTAN étaient présents avec nous et a participé à la planification. Et donc il y a aujourd'hui ces différentes couches de garantie de sécurité où les États-Unis d'Amérique ont clarifié leur participation, et en particulier sur ce qu'on appelle le monitoring, c'est-à-dire la surveillance de la ligne de front. Les capacités d'observation et de suivi américaines sont absolument déterminantes et ont été confirmées. Donc tout ça pour vous dire que ces derniers mois, nous avons élaboré un ensemble, il est cohérent, il est solide. Les États-Unis d'Amérique nous ont demandé de faire plus, nous le faisons et c'est légitime et nous le voulons. Nous avons pour la première fois une coalition des volontaires qui porte de telles garanties, mais nous avons aussi une participation américaine par les moyens qu'elle apporte et ce fameux backstop, c'est-à-dire ces garanties. Dans ce contexte-là, à la fois les déclarations du président Trump à Mar-a-Lago avec le président Zelenskyy en fin d'année dernière, ce qui a été réaffirmé par les généraux compétents dans la chaîne de commandement américaine, et ce qui a été porté aujourd'hui par messieurs Witkoff et Kushner est cohérent, c'est un engagement américain pour la paix. Je les en remercie. Et donc, je n'ai pas lieu de suivre quelques thèses qui douteraient de cet engagement, compte tenu de leur présence, des mots très forts qu'ils ont eu aujourd'hui, et du travail qui a été mené avec les États-Unis d'Amérique pour conduire ce dispositif. J'ajoute que les États-Unis d'Amérique, en tant que signataires de la Charte des Nations Unies et membres de l'OTAN, sont aussi des alliés des Européens. Et donc, c'est en tant que tel qu'ils sont présents aujourd'hui et qu'ils ont travaillé à nos côtés durant ces dernières semaines. Merci beaucoup.
Hello to everyone. Oksana Tkachenko, Ukrainian channel 1+1. I have a few questions. First one for Ukrainian president. Пане президенте, чи можете ви сказати, що ці гарантії безпеки дійсно вже готові до реалізації, фіналізовані? І як ви бачите юридичну реалізацію їх в Україні? Тобто, чи буде це якесь запрошення для цього миротворчого контингенту? And also question to European leaders. Could you explain specifically what would be a contribution from each of your country? Can we name a number of troops and mandate they will have? And to the American side, if I may, what does it mean being a backstop in these security guarantees? And when are you going to present them to President Trump and to the Russian side? Is there any specific date for meeting? Thank you.
Дякую за запитання. Передусім, я вважаю, що гарантії коаліції охочих повинні працювати разом з гарантіями Сполучених Штатів Америки. І саме так буде. Ми працюємо над тим, щоб це були юридично зобов'язуючі гарантії. Що стосується американської сторони, наші двосторонні гарантії безпеки будуть підтримані Конгресом. Дай Бог, щоб ми дійшли до цього моменту. Ми на це розраховуємо, документи в принципі готові, про деталі поки що говорити не можу. Що стосується декларації, це перший крок, який ми підписали, він дуже важливий, він відкриває сам процес, і ці юридично також ці документи будуть юридично зобов'язуючі. Більшості країн із коаліції охочих потрібна підтримка їх парламенті. Тому після декларації, після цього процесу, країни йдуть в парламенти. Також розраховуємо на цю підтримку.
So with regards to the security guarantees, there was extensive conversations about that with President Zelenskyy and President Trump at Mar-a-Lago in December. And I think that they really resolved most, if not all, of the issues that are outstanding on that. These have been really designed over the last really month in consultation with the Ukrainians, with the Europeans. I will say I think today was a very, very big milestone, and I thank President Macron for assembling this and for all of the work that everyone here has done behind the scenes to bring this together. This does not mean that we will make peace, but peace would not be possible without the progress that was made here today, meaning that if Ukraine is going to make a final deal, they have to know that after a deal, they are secure, they have obviously a robust deterrence, and there's real backstops to make sure that this will not happen again. One of the reasons why President Trump is comfortable with where the security guarantees are headed towards is because based on his assessments and his conversations with President Putin is that if we can make the right deal, it would mean a deal where both sides look to de-escalate, that there's a real monitoring mechanism, real ability, if there ever is a violation, to have deconfliction and hopefully, de-escalation. And obviously, you create a robust deterrence, peace through strength, where it's unlikely that somebody will ever go and start this again. So this is a really important building block towards an eventual peace deal. And I think that it's a big, big milestone that was reached today between the Europeans with the Coalition of the Willing. And I really want to just thank the DOD and the whole amazing team in the U.S. Obviously, you saw last week the incredible capability of the U.S. military, and that's just a small piece of what they're capable of doing. And so they've been really thinking about this, and they believe that a real peace here is possible, and there are ways to stand behind it.
James Mates, ITV News from London. Mr. Starmer, Prime Minister, today's commitments by the United States are already being called a game changer, and I know there's a reluctance to talk about Greenland today, but what value do these commitments have on the very day that at the highest levels of government in Washington they are talking about seizing the sovereign territory of a fellow NATO member. Mr. Witkoff or Mr. Kushner, if I may ask you, the commitments made today, does President Trump commit to coming to the aid of any European forces deployed in Ukraine were they to come into conflict with Russian forces? Will President Trump have their back? And President Zelenskyy, if I may ask you, is this enough? You said before today you were 90% of the way towards a peace agreement. How close are you now?
Well, let me start. On the question of Greenland, I've been very clear as to what my position and the position of the UK government is, both in statements I made myself yesterday and in the statement that was put out earlier today. I've been equally clear that the relationship between the UK and the US is one of our closest relationships, particularly on issues on defence, security and intelligence. And we work with the US 24/7 on those issues. So far as today is concerned, the Coalition of the Willing was set up just under a year ago now, with the aim to bring about just and lasting peace. And we knew that that would require security guarantees. We worked on military plans, which were prepared over the early months of the year. To a point of several months ago, we were able to set them out with clarity. Today, we've made real progress on the political commitment, declarations, and commitments that have been made today. The biggest meeting of the Coalition of the Willing in terms of the number of leaders here, and the first meeting of the Coalition where we've been sat together with our American colleagues around the same table, hammering out these issues. So this is the political declaration that goes with it. And we've made some real progress on those security guarantees. They're set out in the documents we've issued, but they include on issues such as working with the US on ceasefire monitoring, on binding commitments to support Ukraine, and on the operations headquarters here in Paris. And as Jared said a moment ago, and I thank Steve and Jared for all the work they've done in recent weeks, particularly on the security guarantees, and for being here today at our meeting. But peace is only possible because of the progress that we're making in these meetings of the Coalition of the Willing and that we've made here today. And I'm really pleased that nearly a year after we begun this work with the Coalition of the Willing, that we've got this far now with security guarantees. Of course, nobody is saying that is job done. Of course, there's more work always to be done, but we've made some real progress today, and that is a good thing for Ukraine. It's a good thing for Europe. It's a good thing for the United Kingdom because, of course, this is about our security, our defence, our freedoms, and the impact that it's already had over 4 long years on Ukraine, on Europe, and back in the United Kingdom.
The President strongly stands behind security protocols. Those security protocols are meant to, A, deter any attacks, any further attacks in Ukraine, and B, if there are any attacks, they're meant to defend, and they will do both. They are as strong as anyone has ever seen. Everyone on this panel, on this stage up here, has acknowledged that, as has almost all of the countries that sat at the table with us today. The President does not back down from his commitments. He is strong for the country of Ukraine and for a peace deal, and we will be there for the Ukrainians in helping them to get to that final peace, and we're confident we will get there. You want to say something, Jared? Perfect.
Thank you very much for your question. First of all, we have declaration, and I think this is a huge step forward, because 1 year ago we couldn't even, think about it, and now we have this step. Yes, of course, not enough, not still enough. We will have document which will be supported, I hope, I'm sure, between us, will be supported by European parliaments, and that will be enough. Then we have really very good dialogue with American side. Thanks again, Steve and Jared. So we really have good steps forward. Yes, 90%, but we are each day a little bit closer. It's still not enough to have a peace, because enough when the war will finish, will end in Ukraine, we still have losses. So it's still not enough. Thank you very much.
Bonsoir, guten Abend, Bundeskanzler Merz, Michaela Wiegel, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. Hier ist von vielen wichtigen Etappen die Rede. Eine wichtige Etappe ist vielleicht auch, dass Deutschland bereit ist, militärisch sich an der Koalition der Willigen zu beteiligen. Herr Bundeskanzler, reicht es, im benachbarten NATO-Gebiet Soldaten zu stationieren? Können Sie etwas mehr sagen, auch was die Erwartungen, die an Sie herangetragen worden sind? Sie haben es schon erwähnt, Deutschland ist der wichtigste Unterstützer. Müssen wir militärisch uns stärker beteiligen?
Frau Wiegel, vielen Dank für die Frage. Wir haben das sehr ausführlich miteinander diskutiert. Ich habe für die Bundesregierung erklärt, dass wir selbstverständlich bereit sind, auch an den Sicherheitsgarantien teilzunehmen. In welcher Form wir das machen können, ist zurzeit offen, weil das gesamte Paket der Sicherheitsgarantien noch nicht abschließend besprochen worden ist. Es gibt jetzt erste sehr konkrete Vorschläge. Wenn Deutschland sich daran beteiligt, dann bedarf dies zunächst eines Beschlusses der Bundesregierung und anschließend einer Bestätigung des Deutschen Bundestages. Ich werde der Bundesregierung und gegebenenfalls dem Deutschen Bundestag auch erst dann Vorschläge unterbreiten, wenn es hier zu einem Waffenstillstand gekommen ist. Und wenn wir in der Koalition der Willigen zu einer entsprechenden gemeinsamen Vorgehensweise Vereinbarung getroffen haben. Wir sind auf dem Weg dorthin. Aber ich habe in der Runde heute Nachmittag auch noch einmal deutlich gemacht, es kann auch richtig sein, beides zu tun. Sowohl Truppen in der Ukraine zu stationieren, das sind vor allen Dingen die Truppen der Ukraine, die gestärkt werden müssen, die unterstützt werden müssen, aber dann eben auch in benachbarten Staaten zur Ukraine weitere Truppen zu stationieren, die für den Fall einer erneuten russischen Aggression eingesetzt werden können. Ich spreche bewusst hier im Konjunktiv, weil das Ganze im Gesamtkontext, im gesamten Paket noch nicht ausverhandelt ist, aber noch einmal die Grundvoraussetzung ist, dass es einen Waffenstillstand gibt, ein Abkommen mit Russland über einen Waffenstillstand. Und dieser Waffenstillstand, der muss dann abgesichert werden durch entsprechende militärische Unterstützung der Ukraine. Und ich will es hier auch noch einmal betonen, es ist nicht nur eine militärische Unterstützung der Ukraine, es ist eine militärische Unterstützung des Friedens und der Freiheit in ganz Europa. Und deswegen engagieren wir uns hier auch. Es geht nicht allein um die territoriale Integrität der Ukraine. Es geht um die dauerhafte Aufrechterhaltung der politischen Friedensordnung und Freiheitsordnung in ganz Europa. Und die haben wir immer verteidigt. Und da ist Abschreckung das Stichwort der letzten 70 Jahre. Und das wird es nach meiner festen Überzeugung auch für die nächsten Jahre und Jahrzehnte bleiben.
Cette conférence de presse est maintenant terminée.
That's the end of the press conference. Thank you all very much and good night. And happy New Year once again to you all.